Modern survival culture treats fire as the holy grail. Every kit, course, and checklist elevates ignition above all else, as if the moment a spark appears, danger recedes. History tells a different story. Fire mattered, but it was rarely the decisive factor in whether people lived or died. Across wars, migrations, shipwrecks, and frontier winters, the real killers were exposure, exhaustion, dehydration, infection, and poor positioning. People with fire still died. People without it often lived, because they focused on fundamentals that controlled heat loss, energy drain, and risk. Historical survival was not about dramatic ignition, it was about systems. Look at World War II, Arctic expeditions, and early frontier settlements. Fire was frequently unavailable, forbidden, or counterproductive. Smoke revealed positions. Flames consumed scarce fuel. Heat drew attention. Soldiers on active fronts often went nights without fire by design. Their survival doctrine emphasized wind control, ground insulation, moisture management, and routine. Fire was treated as optional, sometimes dangerous, and never relied upon as the primary defense against cold. The first priority was always exposure, not warmth. Heat generation means nothing if heat loss is uncontrolled. A fire raises ambient temperature slightly, but wind can strip that gain instantly. Historical manuals taught people to select positions that blocked airflow before thinking about heat. Reverse slopes, tree lines, leeward sides of terrain, and shallow depressions mattered more than flames. Blocking wind could raise perceived temperature by 10 degrees or more without burning anything. That principle still applies. Before lighting a fire, reposition yourself so wind cannot reach your body directly. If you cannot stop wind, fire becomes a losing battle. Ground contact was the second priority history focused on. Frozen or damp earth drains heat relentlessly. Many people with fires still froze because they lay directly on the ground. Historical survivors understood that separation mattered more than surface warmth. They used pine boughs, straw, reeds, spare clothing, packs, rope coils, even folded bark to trap air beneath the body. The material didn't need to be thick. It needed to create dead air space. In practical terms today, that means elevating yourself even slightly, using branches, debris, or a folded jacket before worrying about fire size or placement. Moisture management outranked ignition entirely. Wet clothing in cold conditions is a death sentence regardless of fire. During the Second World War, training emphasized underdressing while moving to avoid sweat, then immediately insulating during rest. Survivors dried socks obsessively, rotated layers, and vented clothing before perspiration soaked fabric. Fire could help dry gear, but relying on fire to fix wetness was risky. If fire failed or had to be abandoned, wet clothing accelerated heat loss catastrophically. The practical lesson is simple. Regulate effort to avoid sweating, vent early, and protect dry layers at all costs. Fire should assist dryness, not be the only plan for it. History also deprioritized fire because of fuel realities. In many environments, fuel is scarce, wet, or dangerous to collect. Arctic regions, alpine zones, deserts, and active battlefields punish people who depended on steady flames. Survivors learned to conserve energy rather than burn it. They reduced movement, minimized exposed surface area, and used shared warmth. Sleeping in pairs or small groups reduced heat loss dramatically. That tactic required no fuel and worked every night. It still does. Another overlooked historical priority was routine. Fire feels productive and comforting, which is why people fixate on it. Routine feels boring, but it saves lives. Historical survivors followed mechanical checklists, regardless of exhaustion, block wind, insulate ground, loosen boots, move toes, dry skin, adjust layers, eat when possible, rest in intervals. Fire was inserted into that routine only if it fit safely. Modern survival advice often replaces routine with gear reliance. History shows routine beats equipment when stress erodes judgment. Food is another area where, honestly, fire is a bit overrated. Cooking is important in the long run, sure, but survival doesn't just collapse straight away without hot meals. The human body can actually function for several days with limited calories. What it really can't tolerate, though, is uncontrolled exposure, even for just a few hours. Historical accounts time and again show people surviving cold nights hungry but protected from the wind and loss of heat to the ground. Fire, of course, helped with morale and digestion, but it never quite replaced insulation, proper positioning, or, well, plain old discipline. Even when it comes to signaling, fire often takes a back seat. Many survivors actually avoided using fire because it could create a false sense of confidence. Instead, they relied on movement, sound, reflective materials, or even the terrain itself for signaling. In combat zones, fire was something to be actively avoided, and in civilian disasters it sometimes led to secondary emergencies. History really has treated fire as a tool with its own costs, not as some kind of universal solution. This isn't to say fire isn't important, it absolutely is, but it's contextual. Fire works best when it complements exposure control, rather than trying to substitute for it. Practically, that means building small, shielded fires rather than large ones, using them briefly to dry, cook, or warm extremities, and extinguishing them once their purpose is served. It means positioning fires so heat reflects toward insulated bodies rather than dissipating into wind. It means never allowing fire tasks to distract from hydration, circulation, or shelter integrity. What history focused on instead of fire was time. Every survival decision aimed to buy time safely. Blocking wind buys time, staying dry buys time, conserving energy buys time, preventing injury buys time. Fire can buy time, but it can also waste it if misused. People who chased flames while neglecting basics often paid for it. The modern obsession with fire persists because it is visible, teachable, and dramatic. History is quieter. It shows survival as a series of small, disciplined choices repeated under fatigue. The people who lived were not better at lighting sparks. They were better at not losing heat, not soaking clothes, not exhausting themselves, and not gambling on single solutions. If you strip survival down to what history consistently rewarded, fire drops from the top of the list. Exposure control comes first, moisture management follows, ground insulation and wind blocking are non-negotiable, routine sustains judgment. Fire fits into that framework only when conditions allow. Understanding this doesn't make fire irrelevant, it makes it honest, and honesty is what kept people alive long before survival became a product category.